rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years and let her sew again.
So it's the next day or so. Can't remember anymore. It's all a blur. And while the paint is drying and I'm waiting for the decals to arrive in the mail, I'm going to be working on this box. Now I've already pulled the metal base out and sandblasted it, and I actually have the first coat of self-etching primer on it, so I'll show that to you in there. My thoughts for this box, it was full of, sorry about that, standing on my stand. It was full of mouse droppings, so I've already kind of dusted it out, vacuumed it. One of the little corner supports has come out, so that's going to be needing to be put back in. My thought is I'm going to remove the hardware, clean and polish all the hardware, sand down and everything, the wood. I'm not going to be staining it exactly. I'm going to be using the Restore Finish oil stuff, and I think that will be good, and that way it won't change anything. This whole head is kind of kajingered, so I'm going to have to work on that. But let me take you into the paint booth and I'll show you the tray. So at this point, I just have one coat of self-etching primer. This is the back side. That hole used to be screwed into the machine when it was shipped originally. It's not anymore. This is the this is the exposed side. Once this side has a few more minutes to dry, I'll flip it over and paint the other side. It is going to be a gloss black, just like it was originally. So you don't need to see me painting that because you saw me paint the machine itself. So I think I mentioned before that this is a star machine. It has an asterisk instead of a letter prefix in the serial number. And the people at ISMACS, the Singer in the Vintage Sewing Machine Database headquarters, those people have been trying to do some research on it for me, and it's been intriguing watching their emails back and forth to each other. And there's really not a clear answer on it. But I can tell you a few things that have come up. One is there is no cast number on this machine. Now, every single other Singer machine that I have done, when you remove the emblem, the little gold medallion, there's usually a number that is pressed into the casting. And I'm assuming that is the cast number so they can keep track of the conditions of the different casts. This one didn't have one. And so that, combined with the little star prefix, leads me to believe that it wasn't part of the full run production. It might have been in a test run before. And I am still with the thought that this came from Scotland, because to me it very closely resembles a 27K that I actually have in my shop right now. Very, very closely. They look like big sister and little sister. So I believe that this is a 28K, and K means usually from the Kilbowie plant, even though there's a K that I've done that was made in Russia, but that's a whole different story. Anyhow, I think that going by all of the data that they have, they've been open and honest and saying they don't have all of the data. It's incomplete, and that there's a few of these star machines that have come up, and honestly they're hoping that more do come forward, because They're kind of an enigma at this point. I gave her a quick scrub down, some oil soap and water and steel wool, just because there were so many layers, plus the rodent stuff. We want to get rid of that. And then I heat dried her, and I'm just going to give her a light sanding. I don't want to remove all of these markings because that's part of her history. So you'll still be able to see some of that, but I think that that's important to leave. I'm just worried about getting all of the surface grime and things like that off right now. There was a glob of something right here. It wasn't gum. It looked like gum, but it wasn't gum. I'm thinking that maybe this was used on a kitchen table and there was some dough or something that it was sat on and it just kind of solidified. So I am removing that, but there you go. So anyway, continuing the thought of this machine, its age and everything, since we can't be definite, the best guess for me is that the 1902 date, made in Scotland, is the one that is working the best. So that's what I'm going to be going with, unless I find out otherwise. But if anyone else has ever had an asterisk machine, let me know. I'm very curious, and honestly, so are people at the ISMAX. I got the decals in the mail this morning, and they are the Victorian decals with the green accents, which I think are the best. So I'm going to go ahead and be cutting these out and applying them so you can see. One thing I wanted to point out is I have pulled off the masking tape over the slide plate areas, and with a little paintbrush I have very carefully applied some Evapo-Rust here because I'm leaving that bare metal, and so that's going to keep it from wanting to rust. But before I go and put the clear coat on, I will mask over that and I will clean it off and everything to remove any film. But I wanted to keep that clean so that those slide plates can go on and off easily. So the decals I'm going to leave to dry overnight. I want all the water to be completely evaporated from them before I clear coat. And I will be using my usual Finish One clear coat. I'll show you that when I do it. Once they're dry, just before I clear coat it, I will come back with a little bit of glass cleaner on my clean microfiber cloth. Clean it all off and then use a tack cloth to make sure that there is no dust on her, and then I'll come back and clear coat her. But for now, we're just going to let her kind of sit here and rest, and I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, my battery is very low, so I couldn't bring it in here, but I have my first coat of clear coat on. You can see it's looking fabulous. I'm going to check it in about 15 minutes, and at that point I can put on the second coat and do the other side of the wheel. Everything's looking good. Clear coat that I'm using it's an automotive grade. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. I find it works really well. You use 4 parts of the clear coat itself, 1 part of the hardener. I find that 2 ounces of clear coat is more than enough for a standard sewing machine. It's more than enough for a smaller one, but you know, that's what I'm going with. I usually mix up 2 ounces and then 1/2 ounce of the hardener. I can let it tack up in about 15 minutes, give it another coat, and then I'm going to need to let it just rest. Technically, it's going to be hard enough to handle very quickly, but I just want to make double sure that, you know, I don't get a fingerprint or something in there. So once I put the second coat on, I'll probably leave it overnight before I come back in and remove all of my masking. Okay, so she does have the second coat on now. It's been a couple minutes, so the air is clearer in here. So I think she's looking amazingly lovely. And her wheel, you know, as you do. So I will be back in a couple days and we will get started putting her back together. Okay, I am going to get started putting this girl back together today. She is completely dry, and I try to give her clear coat plenty of time to dry before I get started. So honestly, the best place to get started would be underneath, but I don't have my block of wood clamped on right now, and since the camera's up, I think I'm going to go ahead and work on her nose. Okay, I'm just going to pop this little block right here, so hopefully I can get a better angle. So we have a part that goes on this side, a part that goes down here, all kinds of stuff inside. And what I want to do is put the things that are on the bottom layer first. Okay, so first of all, over here on this side, okay, I'm going to turn this wheel. If I need to, I can adjust it. This piece here has a little bearing that needs to go inside that slot. Okay, so I'm just going to slide it in, set it in that bearing. It seems to work pretty well if I have it in that position instead of over here, you know. Setting it in, lining up this little eyelet with the hole, and I have a big flathead screw that goes in that spot. Okay, so I've got my needle bar here and all of my needle bar attachments, and this is cleaner now, much cleaner, and this little groove here is what this bearing here is going to travel on. And I just realized I never pulled that out to clean it, so wow, let me get this cleaned really quick and then I'll pop it back on there. Okay, that's a lot better. It's cleaner, it's spinning. Now I want to make sure that I have oil all over this piece here, you know, so that it's going to stay moving freely. So that's pretty good. I'm also going to make sure I have oil in here, oil everywhere, you know the drill. So let me just get started putting it together. Got a lot of oil on here. I want to make sure it stays nice and lubricated. So down here, you see there's the two little holes at the bottom of the needle bar, and if I turn it this way, oh my gosh, why are you being stiff again? I'm gonna have to oil it one more time. But there's a slot that you can see here. Up here, there is a hole. I need to, with the needle bar so I can see the slot, line up this hole with that hole in the bracket right there. Okay, so lining up this hole with that hole. Hard to see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put the flat part of the presser bar facing out, all right? And this is not its final position. I'm just going to go ahead and get that set screw put back in for now, and I'll make that adjustment later. Okay, so I need to get the tension on, and you saw I already put that bracket on. The spring, I had issues with filming. I probably showed you a spring that was all out of sorts. And I went through my little stash, and the only other springs I had for a 27, 28, things like that, were in even worse condition than that. So what I've done is I've taken the original spring, clipped off that part that was unsprung, and just kind of bent it, you know, with my little pliers to get the little loop that I needed. And I think it's going to work. It seems to be holding itself pretty well here. So I'm going to go ahead and do tension discs on. They kind of fit underneath this spring here. The tension release goes on top of that into this little hole, and then the spring, and then the little nut to hold it all together. I think that's good. If I need to adjust this little spring when I'm timing everything up, I can do that. And if worse comes to worse, I can grab a really rusty spring off of a different one, polish it up really nice, and then swap that out. I am going to, now that I have this whole front part in, just because it was a total remake and everything, and she was in pretty bad shape to start with, I want to make sure that it's going to run smooth. So basically, like in manufacturing, when they run things through to get it all broken in, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm using this little attachment on my drill, oopsie, sorry about that, to get her going. Okay, so everything's moving really smoothly now. I'll take this tape off so that when it's time I can put the wheel back on. All right, I got it in. This one's kind of a pain because the fork head itself is the same size as a bigger machine, a 27, but it's less room in there to work in, so it's a little tight. But this is your stitch length. So in, I believe in all the way is the longest stitch, and, or maybe it's the opposite way. I can never remember till I'm actually sewing, but one way is stitching in place, and the other way is the longest possible stitch. And having the threads about halfway visible, so oh, I don't know, where you have like a fat 1/8 of an inch of threads exposed, I think is a good happy medium place for a regular, length of stitch. The little washer under here, make sure that you have that so that the little prongs are out, so that it's going to have the tension it needs to hold that in. And remember, this took a lot of effort to get out, but the screw's in good shape. She's doing well. Okay, so now that that is in, and if you can see, I am using this. I think that it's a good thing to put in there. And it did such a great job when I was taking the machine apart. I bought this when I had another order in at McMaster Car, and I'm just, I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with it. For the rusty, crusty machines that I have a tendency to work on, it seems like it's doing really well. So let me go ahead and put my block up here with my clamp so I can mount her on there and work on her bottom end. Okay, so I want to point out this is not its finished position. I can make adjustments later, moving this shaft back and forth by adjusting these pivot points. I want to make sure that this little bearing that is attached to this part is going to go smoothly in this little slot of this first piece. So, you know, coating it up with some good stuff there. I think we're good. All right, it's moving kind of stiff just because I have everything just kind of set here. The feed dogs, couldn't remember the name. I can put those in from the top, and it has a screw out here I need to adjust. These nuts are going to go on the ends of these pivot points, but again, I'm not going to do my final adjustment on those for a few more minutes now. I just want to get them on there so I don't lose them and everything else. This is that adjustment screw. Remember, it's eccentric, so it's not centered, and it does have a nut on the other side. And so that is going to be an adjustment screw over here. So there you go. Okay, I'm just trying to fit this plate on with the feed dogs, and I can tell right now the feed dogs are over this way too far. So in order to get the plate to fit over the feed dogs, I'm going to need to move them that way. So down here, I'm going to need to adjust these two screws so that this whole little, you can't see that. I need to adjust these two screws so that this whole shaft is going to move that way a couple millimeters. Okay, I still need to move it that way just a hair because when I'm holding this so that I can see the threaded hole underneath this hole, the teeth are bumping up against the bottom of this plate. But while I have it here, I'm looking, and I have this screwed in all the way, which is the longest stitch length, and I can see they're coming up at the very beginning of the track, and they are going almost to the end. I just need to make one small adjustment there. So, hello. Boy. Scratch anything here. I'll lay her back down, and I move her down that way just a hair first. Okay, so at this point I have everything set well, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these two nuts first. You're a 9/16 righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, you know? I need to make sure that this does not turn while I am straightening this. Okay, these away. To adjust the feed dog height is this screw. You just loosen it up, push them up or down the slot, tighten it. So feed dogs side to side in the little groove is this one. Feed dogs front to back in the little groove is this one, okay? And up and down is this one. That's all the adjustment screws. Okay, I'm going to start working on some of the smaller pieces. I need to do the bobbin winder and the hand crank. So let me go ahead and get those assembled separately, and then we'll put them on. What I'm going to do is grab a little tray here so that when I pour these out, nothing gets lost. Lots of parts, lots and lots of parts. Okay, I did get a large tire that is going to go on here. Okay, there it goes. Nice new tire. All right. And just for size comparison, let me grab a regular one. This is the standard size little tire, and if you can see, there is no way you can stretch that onto this wheel, you know. So that's why these are more expensive, but they are thankfully still available. Okay, you know what? I'm going to give this one more quick little polish before I put it together. If you can see, this is not lining up exactly right. I think it's gotten bent at some point, so I'm just going to gently push it back just a hair. Before you do that though, make sure that you don't have something just kind of cross-threaded or something in there. So I'm just going to go back, double check everything in here, make sure it is all good, and then if I still need to, I'm just going to bend this whole little arm in just a hair, just a tiny hair. Okay, I just gave it a couple little quick taps with my little nylon-y mallet, and I think that that is enough. Got a very good snappiness going on here. This bolt is what holds it onto the machine, so that's ready to assemble. I'm going to go ahead and get the hand crank pieces down here and get that put together too. Actually, I want to go ahead and get this put on just in case I need to put a little epoxy. It can be drying. What I've been using lately for tacks are these, which are very similar design to what the originals were. They're hammer screws. And that slight amount of threading really helps to hold it in place. So let me put one, starting it in this little hole here, and there's the other one. Here it is. Get it out and start it in. It's very dark. This little hole right here. Okay, so I can get those pushed in. And then come back and just tap them in place. Sometimes the machine holes are all different sizes. There wasn't one standard anywhere, I don't think. So I have different size ones. These, which seem to be the most consistent, are these. Okay? They are size aught, size 0. The size 00 double aught is too small in most cases. Then they skip. McMaster-Carr doesn't carry a size 1 for some reason, but then size 2 is much too big. So anyhow, that looks like it's going to hold very well. Very pleased with that. All right, I took a little break and I am back out here. And actually, before I get the hand crank on, I want to go through a couple things just to make sure, honestly, that she works. So first of all, if you remember her slide plates, well, there was only one, and it was in really bad shape. The other was missing. And these are smaller than a 27, so it's an odd size. Placements were not available. So what I did is went ahead and polished up really well the one that was really bad, and the only other one I could find to match it was also kind of bad. So they are both equally pitted, but rust-free at this point, okay? So those are gonna go on here. And also I wanted to point out another thing on the bobbin. So you saw I cleaned up a lot of rust on a lot of pieces. This is the bobbin case, the shuttle, and it's very, very rusty. And yes, I could probably polish it up, but the thing is, these have to be perfectly smooth for the thread to go through and not bind up. So I went ahead and I bought a new one, okay? So I'll just return this because, you know, it's got heritage and everything in it. But I'm going to be using the new shuttle. And this is the first time I'm trying it to make sure it fits. It feels awful tight there. It looks like the same size. I don't know why it's not popping in. Well, this one isn't either. I think I just need to move that whole bracket in just a bit. Let me do that and I'll be right back. All right, so just to let you know, these slide plates were a little bit of a pain. This one was bent, so I had to hammer it down until it was flat again and, you know, clean off the edges and everything. And it's going to slide in now very well. And the same with the front. It wasn't bent, but, you know, it had all kinds of issues. So that's going to work. So yeah, let me go ahead and get this bracket moved back just a hair. Okay, So the shuttle fits in there now, so that's what the issue was. And to do that, don't know if you can see, there is a little screw that attaches this bracket here. You just loosen it, pop the whole bracket in, tighten it up again, okay? But you can see that's moving good there. So, since this is in, and I wanted to show you the new shuttle that I bought. Came with several bobbins. So again, I'm just going to, oh, this is a broken one that I had on my desk somehow. So I'm just going to return this one. You know, that's the original bobbin, which is important, and this is the original shuttle. And I'm going to try to wind some thread onto one of these new bobbins with the bobbin winder that I still have to put on here. Okay, that looks like it's lined up pretty good. So we'll get this screw, and it comes in from this side, if I remember right. And it should go all the way through. Come on. Maybe it goes the opposite way. Hang on. Oh, yeah, sorry. It does. This screw starts on the other side. Hang on. Let me flip it around and drive it in that direction. I think I was thinking that because a day or so ago I was taking apart a 27K, which is like the big sister to this machine, and it had the screw coming from that direction. But, you know, such is life. Okay, so now if I push that up, when I turn this wheel, you can watch that cog turning, and it is turning, so that's great. I'm just thinking it's going to be a pain to wind the entire bobbin just going like that. I might wait until I have the hand crank on here to do that. And even though it's probably very ancient thread, I'm going to use this bobbin here just to try it out and see if get the needle bar position and everything timed up just to see if that's going to work. And this machine does just use a standard modern size 15 by 1 needle. Oops, and I just dropped one onto my knee here, so I'm going to pop that in because I want to make sure I have a new needle when I'm getting her all ready. Okay. This is the thread guide. I need to get it in place because the screw that attaches this thread guide is actually the stopper for the needle height placement stopper. So you can't go without that. Okay. Then I'm going to get this started here. Okay, so that's threaded on enough, and then I could just pop it up. I need to rock that thread guide back just a hair. It's in my way. All right, so now that is on. Just gonna tighten it up just a little bit more, just so it holds up. The flat part of the needle is gonna go up against the needle bar, so the flat part is on this side, okay? So I'm just gonna slide that up until it can stop. This is not feeling right. Give me a second. I want to play. I just had a little schmutz or something inside of the little threads there, so we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and pop a thread up here on top. I know it's not going to be perfect because I don't have the plate on up here, but I think I'm going to be able to thread it enough that I can see if that shuttle is going to pick it up. And that's really all I'm worried about right now. And I can see a couple things. I've got probably a tension issue here I'm going to need to deal with. And I need to adjust this again here. Because that thread did not want to pass through very easily. Okay. All right, so just if I clip this thread, okay, I need that little plate. I need to put this plate on here before I can try it out. Okay, so the test is, can it pick up the shuttle thread? And it looks like it is. It is, it's picking it up. So yay, I think that's a very good sign to me. Okay, feeling confident. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this thread off. I need to put a wick in here. This little hole right here is for an oil wick, so let me go grab one. Okay, so this is 3/16 inch wick, as you do. I'm going to cut a little piece, like a fat 1/4 inch of it, and push that into this hole here, and get my oil, and I need to refill my little oil bottle here. And I'm just going to saturate that. That's going to feed just a tiny bit of oil to the inside, so as this shuttle moves back and forth, it'll pick up just a tiny bit there. So as you're going, when you're oiling your machine, add some to that little wick place right there. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and slide this plate back on, and she did have a thread cutter, and that goes on this back presser bar. I don't want to cut myself, so I'm just going to use my pliers to move it up. Okay, so it's a thread cutter. I don't think you can see. Okay, so sorry about that. So I just popped the thread cutter back on. And I'm going to go ahead and put the foot on. Get this needle up out of the way here. With its little fancy little knurled nut thumb screw thing. Okay. All right. What do I still have up here? I have plates. I'm going to give these plates a quick polish, and then that's going to be it for reassembling parts up here. I still need to put the hand crank together, but once I get this on, I can maneuver it enough that I can work out the tension issues and everything like that. The hand crank is just, you know, power. It's not the subtleties of timing, so. Why aren't you? Oh, this foot is not lined up. Do you see that? The needle was hitting on it. I need to loosen up. Excuse me. All right. So if you can see, the needle was tapping on the toe. That is because my presser bar is not in alignment. So I'm loosening up this screw here, so I can rotate it, put it down, and I want to make sure the feed dogs are in their down position. Push this down all the way, make sure the needle has plenty of clearance. All right, let's see how that's going to work. That's much better. Okay. All right. Okay, so I've got her threaded up. This is the big moment of truth. I have not tried off camera or anything. So let's see how she does. You know what? She's sewing. I've got to adjust the tension. It looks like I need to increase it on the bottom just a bit. Hang on. So this little screw, I can't see it, but there's a little screw right there that is visible. Let me just open this. I'm just going to turn it about a third of a turn there. Yeah, let's see what that does. Well, that's a whole lot better. Wow. Okay, so she's on her longest stitch. I'm going to bring it out a little bit so that I have more of an average sewing stitch size. And her stitches are going to be very greasy. I can tell you that because she's fairly full of oil. Oh, I need to. When you're not winding a bobbin, pull this forward so there's a gap in there. Okay, when you get done with stitching, lift the presser foot, push this little bottom paddle here with your thumb, which lets out the tension, and then let it go. So this is just my first run here, and you know what? It's pretty darn good considering I'm using a bobbin. It's probably 100 years old. Well, no, this was used in the 60s, so it's about 50 years old. Looks like I need to increase my thread tension just a hair because it's just barely peeking through there. But look, that's the back and that's the front for the first row of stitches. So I'm just going to keep playing with her, getting her all dialed in, and then I'm going to put the hand wheel back on. Okay, she's doing great, so I'm going to go ahead and get her hand wheel put back together, get all of her little parts. There's her big crank. Down here, I think that is it there. Okay, if you remember, on this part here, there was a piece of leather that had, rotted. So instead of that, this is shrink tubing. So I need a piece that's about that wide. Go ahead and cut it here. Okay. This is a very big piece of shrink tubing. It's 1/2 inch. I was using this on a typewriter, I think. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and pop that on here and heat it up so it can shrink up. Okay, so there you go. I had to walk to the other side. Didn't want to move my camera. This stuff has it's the marine version, and it does have a little bit of adhesive on the inside, so it should stick and not want to go anywhere. So there was a staple and a little plate, and here is the staple, here is the little plate. I need to tap that back into place, so let me go ahead and do that. And I'm going to take this big screw and connect it down there. Alrighty, I've got her hand crank on, so let's see. Oh, she's looking so good. I know it's dirty, but it's sewing really well. Very, very well. The last thing I need to do is test out the bobbin winder and make sure that she's going to wind up. So to do that, if I put one of these new bobbins in here, the way you wind the bobbin is the thread goes from here over this little hook, okay? What I like to do is put the bobbin in there, pull it out a bit. Ooh, I almost forgot these new bobbins have a little eyelet hole. You can put the thread from the inside out through the hole, okay? And that's really going to help you hold it in place. Put it in here. Okay, so this is spring-loaded. It just pulls out. You can see if I give this a gentle tug, it's not going to come out. There's a little fork up there the thread goes through, a little fork down here it goes through. And I like to hold this with my fingers just so that there's a little bit of tension there. Now turn this big circular nut there towards you until it stops. It should only be like a quarter turn or so. Holding this, and there we go. And there we go. So you can see this follower going back and forth. It is loading the bobbin. And turning the handle is a lot harder when you're loading the bobbin. So that's going to help you remember that when you're done loading your bobbin, if it's hard to turn when you're trying to sew again, double check and make sure that that has been disengaged. But you can just keep going back and forth until it's pretty full. Okay, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to tip this down out of the way, turn this back towards the back, and that's going to re-engage the needle here, okay? So I'm just going to leave that bobbin up there, but you can see it is winding it very evenly, so that's great. You know what? No, I'm going to put that in a little baggie with all of the other bobbin thingies. So let me get her cleaned off again. She's got a lot of oily, smudgy fingerprints and stuff everywhere, and stick her in the booth for her glamour shots.
I found an antique sewing machine, forgotten and alone. I touched her rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years of use, and let her sew again.